to Naveen Connect, the place where spirituality meets the messy but beautiful reality of being human. I'm Jean, and with me, as always, is my co-host Humphrey.
Thanks, Jean. Today we're diving into a powerful journey of transformation and purpose. Today's episode, we're going to explore how so many of us do all the right things, have the right job, have the right family, etc., but still feel that lingering emptiness and restlessness. So, with that, I get the pleasure to introduce our guest, Corinne Pampinella, who started in Silicon Valley's tech startup life as a software engineer back in the late 90s. Then after that, she moved into corporate life as an engineer at Wells Fargo. Then she was the co-founder, COO, and CEO of an influencer marketing agency in San Francisco. After that, she retired from the job to become a life coach, coaching women in confidence and resilience. Most recently, she's the executive director at Girls on the Run North Bay, helping young girls find their voice, believing that anything is possible and find their limitless potential.
And Corinne is also a very close friend of mine. I should say that we actually trauma bonded over a lot of obstacles and situations. So welcome, Corinne, to the show.
Thank you, Jean and Humphrey. I'm very excited to be here.
One of the things that, when I think about you, I think about your great ability to kind of lift people up, but also at the same time, give them a lot of clarity in life. I've seen you done this countless times, when we were in the corporate world together. You always exhibited this very high value of integrity, but empathy at the same time. And I think that's why people naturally gravitate you and also trust you. Mm-hmm. So with that, could you share a little bit about yourself with our listeners?
Yeah. Oh, well, that's really nice of you to say, Jean. Thank you so much. I felt like I've always been someone who thinks of others and has naturally built this empathy, and I'm not sure where I get it from. Probably my parents in some capacity, right? But I recently, I'd say between 3 to 5 years ago, had a turning point. I was sitting at my desk, reading a bunch of emails coming in, and doing all the work to just make sure I'm not a bottleneck for everyone else. But then I said, what am I doing here? Like, why am I still going through this? And am I happy doing what I'm doing? And I really think I was forced with that question. I was just so go before. And really thinking about, we need to make this work. We need to do this. We need to do this. It really just forced me to have an introspective moment and really ask, what is it about this job that I love? What is it that keeps me going? And what I came up with, just thinking about it over time, is I really am here not because I'm, sadly, I didn't love influencer marketing work, but I really loved the people that I was helping and that were with my team. And I loved more, not just them, but just that I love seeing them grow. I love seeing them transform. I love that I could help and be part of that journey for them. So when I kind of thought about that, and it was also during the time that I was introduced to Girls on the Run, which we could talk about later, is really thinking about how I could start doing more purposeful work. And so that's where I really started changing my perspective. I spent a lot more time investing in myself and rediscovering what makes me happy. And really that led me to leaving that role and deciding, okay, now that I know that I love helping others, the natural thing that really came to me was being a life coach, a confidence coach, and specifically just with people that can resonate with my journey, women, and really helping them find that resilience, that purpose, that confidence to go on their path. And just thinking even further down, and that's why I'm now also the executive director with Girls on the Run North Bay, is women have gone through this journey. I mean, men too, but women in particular have gone through a lot of the journey of the struggles of confidence, and where now they have to rebuild that at a later age, like me. And so why not help girls? I wish I had the program when I was a young girl, and maybe that would have changed my trajectory of finding my voice, finding my confidence, knowing that my opinion mattered. And I don't think I had that when I was a child. So that's why I think that purpose really resonates with me too. And I want to give back. I want to, like, everyone has their own talents and their strengths. And I think this one is leaning into mine. So that's where I am. So that's a little bit about me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. And I'm really excited to get into the thick of it. But before we get into the thick of it, I wanted to do something fun. So let's, I have some rapid fire questions designed for our listeners to get to know you a little bit.
Okay.
So
let's do it.
Don't think about it. Just answer when I ask you the question. Okay. Ready?
Okay.
All right.
I'm ready.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Morning person or night owl?
Night owl.
Beach or mountains?
Sorry, say that again?
Beach or mountains?
Ooh, I gotta say mountains.
Oh, okay. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Sweet or salty snacks?
Snack-wise, salty.
Favorite pizza topping?
Anchovy.
Huh? Okay. Okay. I'm not judging. Okay.
Salty.
Last song you listened to?
I don't remember. What did I listen to? It was like an Incubus song.
Okay.
I think, from the Morning View album.
Okay. Netflix or YouTube?
YouTube.
Texting or calling?
Texting.
Would you rather read a book or watch a movie?
Oh my gosh, that's a hard one. Lately, read a book.
Awesome. Okay, that's it. See, it wasn't that
That was
hard.
easy, right? That was easy. That was easy.
But you know what? Some of those are hard questions, I have to say.
When you said anchovies, I was like, huh?
No, that's good, but it lines up. It lines up with the saltiness.
you.
It lines up. It lines up. It lines up.
Well, you told me not to think too hard. That's really what kind of came in my head. Anchovy.
All right. Well, let's get into our first segment, which is titled "On the Journey of Transformation." So, Corinne, I've never forgot the story you told me about your dad and the turning point. I think it was like 15 years ago, and it was such a powerful story. So, I was wondering if we could kick off with that.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, it took me some work to really dig deep on this one. But
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I did. But it is pretty transformative for me. I was around 23 years old, so still relatively new in the world of work. But at that point, I take that back. I think I was a little bit older, but I had been working at the Silicon Valley jobs. I had been working at Wells Fargo for about 7 years now. Had a great job. It was well paid. I felt like I had a lot of great autonomy there and was really kind of, the team was great. I had no complaints there, but I still felt like there was something missing in what I was doing professionally, and I was plateauing. And so when I ended up, and this was during essentially the point where I was working with the influencer marketing company that we had started up. And I told my dad, I said, I am leaving my job at Wells Fargo and I'm going to do this startup thing like full time. And he just gave me a look like, what are you doing? Like this eyebrow raised. And he basically said, well, that's a bad decision and you're going to fail.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That's got to be tough. That must have been tough.
It was really tough. And I was stopped in my tracks, like that ouch that you're talking about, Humphrey. Like I I felt that in my heart. And
it's almost like you got the wind knocked out of you, right?
Yeah. I felt it in my gut that he would be so direct with me and just be not supportive from the beginning and very vocal about it. Right. And I think I was paralyzed for a little bit because I was torn between the validation I was seeking from him, more specifically than my mother. My mother, I think, was sort of just going with the flow. But my dad really had that opinion, and I was seeking it. And but you know, I also felt like this was the right path for me to want to do this. And I don't think there was anything I could really articulate back then, but I just said I'm still going to do it. And I was at an age where I was not financially, you know, dependent on him. And I think that was a big critical thing, that I could have that freedom to make that choice. And I said, okay, well, I guess I'm doing this without my parental approval.
Now, okay, so I mean, is your dad still alive? Let's just ask that question first before
He is not. He had passed away in 2011.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Did he ever came around, or was his opinion, and that was it?
So that's a great question, Humphrey, because, you know, in the beginning it was tough, but I think what really, if I were to, you know, understand how it played out, my dad's disapproval really fueled me.
I was going to say that. I was going to say, I was like, look, like everything, from my perspective, everything is always about perspective in life, right? And so you can use that to break you down, or you could choose to use that to motivate you, right? Like, I'll show you, right? And like for me, and I know for you, Corinne, too, there's this defiant part of everybody that is like, I'm going to just show you that you're wrong, right? And that's the fighter in you. You know?
Yeah. And it came out. I think a lot of people think of me as such like this gentle, passive person, but I think inside I had this like, just watch me. I'm gonna prove you wrong, right? Yeah. So I worked extra hard to just like, we are getting this done, and I did. I spent so many hours there, without regret. I think I learned so much in those early days of typical startup life, right? And it was grueling, but it was rewarding in the same time. So, you know, we would progress over the years. Like in the beginning, we had some really great traction with some good PR, and our business really took off, and we started doing really well. And so whenever I came home to visit my parents, my dad he'd give me this look. He would and he would say, "So, how's business? Are you bankrupt yet?" Like, that's literally how he would say it. And with his little nod, like waiting for me to be, you know, saying something about how miserable I was. I was like, no, we actually closed our first $1 million deal.
There you go.
And then he would go, and then leave it at that. No other comment. Right. And that would happen for maybe like a few years, where he'd be like, so how's business? Right. You know, like, how many people you have now? Like, he would just ask me those inquisitive questions of trying to get the marker of success, right? And he's like, you got a new business? You hire people? How big are you now? How much money you making overall, right? And, you know, you answer all those questions, and he really at some point stopped asking, and he didn't have anything else to challenge me with. To question and
challenge, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it just ended up being like that was my sign of approval. You know, like in our family, it was you don't get praised, but you at least were not getting like dinged and yelled at and you know, penalized for being a failure in any way. And that's how I knew that I had finally won over my dad's. You know, like, okay, I guess you did all right. And you made your choice. You got, okay, acknowledged. You're right. It's acknowledged.
Yeah, that's so like Jean said, look, credit to you for finding, for and I understand the whole like if you don't believe in me, I'm gonna prove you wrong because that's it's funny because either you have that or you don't, right? There's people that
Right.
just fall
The
down
fight
and
in
it's
you.
like, all right, I don't.
Uh,
They don't have to fight, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So clearly that was a moment that you had the fight. Now it's interesting because as you're telling the story, I'm looking at it from a different lens because I'm a dad now of three girls,
Uh-huh.
and I that is the one of the biggest concerns that I always have. Like I that they'll come up with something and I'll be like, oh, right, because of that you want to be supportive, but at the same time you kind of want them to be secure. You kind of want them to be secure, right?
Well,
In a
let me
way.
tell you another story, Humphrey, that will be relevant to that what you're telling me. And this is an additional discovery on top of what I mentioned to you,
Oh,
Jean, this
okay.
story a while back.
mhm.
I think it's able to answer why did I decide I could fight this with my
Yeah.
dad. And it really was because I even looked further back and there was even more about what my dad was giving me as these opinions
Mm-hmm.
about girls. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I say specifically for you, Humphrey, being a
Yeah.
girl dad
Yeah.
is when I was I was figuring out what I want to do for college. What did I want to major in?
Right.
My dad is was a engineer. He was like
Mm-hmm.
an electrical engineer. So technology, math, science was a big thing, right?
Yeah.
And I liked it too. But then I said to him, I go, I want to be an architect because I love the science, I love the
Yeah.
math, but I also had this artistic
The
side of me, and I
creative
thought it
side.
was
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
perfect blend, right? And then my dad goes, that is not an appropriate major for girls. And then he
Oh.
goes, and then I said, all right, so, okay, maybe not architecture. Let me just try and compromise this conversation. And I said, okay, well, what about civil engineering? Engineering, civil. And he goes, oh, no, that is definitely not for girls. You're going to be climbing buildings, like, that's not safe. No,
Oh.
you're not doing that.
Oh.
Um, and this is like, I got into Berkeley, right? So
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
good school. and, And so he goes, he went as far as to say, if you choose architecture or civil engineering, any of those majors, like I'm not going to financially support you. Go ahead and do it.
Really?
And
Wow.
at that point, I think I didn't have my voice, to be honest.
Mm.
And I felt like I was financially bound to this too.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of things going on, right? Where I said, okay, well then I guess I'll study electrical engineering and computer science. And I knew you'd be fine with that.
Right.
So I did it, which is also ironically male dominated field,
It
right?
is.
So
It is like so. From a perspective, I'm also a software engineer. So I'm also an electrical and software engineer, and it is mostly got like like we went to college at the same time. It was mostly guys. Like
yeah,
they were no. So
yeah. And I
um,
hear it hasn't changed much, honestly,
it
sadly.
hasn't. It hasn't. It hasn't. Which is something that I would love to change. But
Yeah. So
um,
I still got a challenge of, oh, you're a girl in this profession, and
right.
I think that's why I had a little bit of fire, and I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
you want to say that I'm a girl and I can't do this, but it is funny, right? That I think that's really why it was almost like a buildup of all these things my dad was saying, like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't do,
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
do throughout my life. And there's some other smaller ones about that too, where
No, yeah.
I just felt like I was getting stifled by what I truly wanted to
Yeah.
do. And then at this point I was like, you know what, I don't have anything that's restricting me from making this choice.
All right.
I'm gonna do it. Right. All I really am seeking at that point is validation.
Right.
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 So
So how was that moment? I mean, it must have been so. So I get the picture. You're getting your dad has there's a history of kind of trying to keep you in a place, right, or mold you in a particular
yes,
way.
right.
And then you get to the point where you're like, I just can't. Like, I'm not. I got to do. This is not what I want to do. I want to do something else. And again, you get that. Let's call it the last drop, right? Like it's just the last
Right.
drop that hits. How do you find how do you find, or how was the process of saying, like, clearly the fire came out, I want to prove you wrong, but at the same time, I'm assuming it must have been hard to kind of go, because you're going against your dad, right? Like, in
Yeah,
your dad, like, your parents are our parents, right? And we always have that
right.
kind of figure that we look at, and you don't want to disappoint them. So how was that moment where you have to say, you know what, making that leap to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to prove you wrong? Like, that must have been hard for you. Like, walk us through that experience of how you did that.
It was hard. I think it was very scary. And I actually think a lot of people have those moments in their life where they kind of come to a head, right? Like they need to really be challenged with their values or what they're truly wanting. And that was a moment for me where I think they're very kind of very fast moments also. So in terms of a process, it probably wasn't very long, and I think it's also work for people to really have self awareness and to really like analyze what's going through with them. For me, I think subconsciously, I I I wanted to just do it, and I knew it was scary, and I think I had this moment of saying, okay, I need to accept that I'm not going to get approval from the people I'm wanting to get approval from. I had to do that very conscious acceptance of it and be okay with it and know and recognize it was scary, but that fear that I have is is not enough for me to want to go forward with something else that really was important to me. And so you're kind of almost weighing scales, right? And you're like, okay, this is what I want. And even though it's not ideal, like this is what I want. And so I'm going to do it.
I
Would
love
you
that. I love that answer.
would you call it like were you following like a gut feeling, or like what would you
Yes.
call that?
I think it was 100% gut feeling.
Okay.
And I recognize not everyone analyzes their decision making with gut.
Mm-hmm.
I've recently, and I don't know, we could talk about that too. Like my coworker really brought me onto this conversation around human design,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and I've discovered what I am, which is I'm a very kind of sacral decision maker. So
Oh.
everything's gut for me,
Yeah.
everything, and it's so true. If I look back at my life, I'm like, yeah, like all of these are just sort of split second, like this feels right. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't explain it, but this is it. And I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's how I became like a life coach. That's how I did this now and like did all of these things. It's just like, it's right. I can't explain it, but it's right.
Right.
Well, so I think, when you reached out to your dad, you were looking for validation, right?
Yes.
And at some point, you started making decisions for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how did your focus shift from kind of getting validation or approval from people to just kind of going with your sacral gut?
Yeah. I honestly think it's a work in progress. And I feel like I'm much better about it now that I've really delved into the world of like spirituality and just like self awareness and improving on one's own journey. Um, but I don't know if admittedly back then I was very good at it, but it really was only in those moments where you really are challenged with the very fundamental values of yourself, right? Like that you really then feel like, okay, are you really losing a part of yourself by making this choice or sacrifice?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like at that point I was doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that progressively from all those stories with my father where he was like, no, I want to do this. No, I want to do this. No. Right. Like whether you realize it or not. And now that I'm like, much older, realize it, it's something where you are compromising, you're sacrificing your own happiness and your own desires to appease some other thing, over time that eats at somebody. It ate at me. And at that point, I think because it wasn't just that particular moment, right? It was a lead up of all of the things that had happened in the history of my relationship with my father.
Yeah. That
it built up where, okay, I'm fed up. I'm like you mentioned, Humphrey, it's the last straw. And it really was in recognition of all the other times that I felt like I was sacrificing my own happiness. And, my dad was a very, he loved in his way, basically. It's not like he was doing this to he thought that these things that these choices and these things that he wanted to do were for my own happiness. He had the best intention. So I don't fault him for that, for being my father and making the choices he did. It really was me. We all need to take ownership of our own choices. And for me, okay, well, I didn't have the voice. I didn't really share how important this might have been to me and have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I let it happen and I felt unhappy about it. I sacrificed some joy in my life and it still stayed with me. It stayed with me until a point where I said, I'm done. You're not taking this one away from me.
Right. Right. That's an amazing journey on that end. And I think a lot of people can relate to that experience, especially with the parenting dynamics.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So now you're doing what you want to do, and you're growing this company, right? And you're being in charge. You're the boss. Go CEO. You're working at it.
Yep.
Did that fulfill you? Or do you get to a point where you were like, oh, this is not enough, or this doesn't go with me? Do you have that scenario there as well?
I think I did. 15, 17 years later. And Jean was part of my, I think, discovery path during that time too.
Yes.
But I think over the years I've realized I'm fueled by my own self growth. So when I was working at Wells Fargo, the reason I was seeking elsewhere, right, is because I felt like I was plateauing. I was not growing and learning professionally anymore. And that's why I was seeking out this new, very different thing in the startup. And I think the startup journey for me also ran its course, where there was a huge amount of growth in the beginning and a lot of things that you don't know, and you're building it up and you're building that up. And I think at some point I realized, okay, what's next? And it did. It took me a little bit to really, that's where, I asked myself, why am I don't feel happy right now. I don't feel 100% fulfilled, but obviously there's still some fulfillment that's keeping me here. What is that fulfillment? Right. And that was where I had to ask myself, okay, it's this aspect of it. It's the people. It's the working with people piece. And I think that's what really led me to seek elsewhere, or just, know that whatever it is that I was in this particular company was not going to fulfill my personal needs the way I wanted to be fulfilled.
Got it. And sorry, you go ahead, go for it.
So, there's been multiple of times where you kind of, reassessed and then kind of decided, which fork in the road you were going to choose, right? Yeah. And that requires a lot of self-awareness, right? Mm-hmm. To understand, how you're feeling in a situation. What advice would you give our listeners in terms of, if they're not, so we can be on the hamster wheel and kind of just go without thinking. What would you suggest for people to do to kind of take that beat, I guess, to kind of reassess, are they on the right path, right?
Great question. And I think the big thing is people need to prioritize time for themselves. Like you said, the hamster wheel, right? I think the reason it took me so long to get to that point, to be honest, is because I was not prioritizing time for me.
Right.
And I kept I'm such a giver. I want everyone else to have a great experience, whether that's at work or whatever, I will go out of my way for somebody. And in doing that, I think over the years, I was not going out of my way for me. I was not giving myself the free moments where I could think. And I do think that people that you see it, I see it a lot. I see friends or just, anyone I'm talking to. I know when that person is unhappy and wants to get out of it, but they are not investing time in themselves to really kind of what's next for me question, right? And but they have to want it. So I think my advice would be to, if you really are wanting to change your life, you need to put yourself first. You need to give yourself, I don't know, even 20 minutes of really just uninterrupted time. What really worked for me was starting a practice in meditation and journaling. Something to really where you are forced to do some reflection. And I do think that everyone has so much noise with their everyday lives, with the people around them and all of that. You can't avoid it. So really making a conscious decision to give yourself space, give yourself the time and the space will help you find the answer that you need.
Right.
And so oftentimes when I'm, working with women who are stuck, they're stuck, they want to get out of it. The first thing I tell them is you need to carve out time, however it works for you. Whether you calendar block, you find a specific time in the day. The main thing is the perspective shift. It's prioritizing yourself. You just got to do it. And no one can tell you that. I mean, I could tell you, but whether you do it or not, that's all up to you. And so it's really an internal decision.
So as a coach, how do you, because I agree 100% with you, right? But I normally hear whenever we offer that advice, and you and I have discussed this in multiple podcasts, you need to take time and
yeah.
A lot of people go, well, I don't have the time. Where am I going to find the time?
Oh my gosh.
Right? So as a coach, how do you advise the people that you work with to find that time, right? How do they do it? What's the best way to start?
Well, I think I would first propose and suggest that you do have the time. Everyone has the time. And it's really about, it's a personal pet peeve of mine. When people say, I don't have the time, I'm like, yes, you have the time. Everyone has time. You make the time. And I think when I was going through coaching and one of the coaches said to me, one of my teachers, he said, okay, let me ask you this. If, you're saying you don't have the time, right? But let's say someone comes up to you and says, I will give you $1 million if you can, go drive 2 hours to go pick up a package and bring it back and do that for 30 days. Would you make the time? Yeah, you would probably make the time, right? So it's a priority thing. It's not a time thing.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Well, I mean, we, like Humphrey said, we've had countless podcasts, interviews and things like that. And we always go back to is this idea of getting to know yourself, going on this self-discovery path, right? And really knowing who you are, right? Yeah. What you want, what you love, what you value, what are your passions, right? And I think for a lot of us, it's either kind of scary to kind of dig into that, because what does that mean? If you dig into that and your life reality right now doesn't match up, does that mean that you have to change all these things? And that could be really, really scary, right? There's also, commitments that you've probably already made that like you can't go back on. But then if you go and do this diving in of trying to figure yourself out, right? Like that
Yeah.
could cause a lot of like upturns. So I could see where people, may be a little bit more hesitant
Right.
Right.
on doing it. But at the same time, if you don't figure out and understand yourself as a person, like it's really weird, right? Like sometimes like people, they know their husbands or they know their friends better than they even know themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
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 And it's like, to me, it's really, I don't know how you would take steps forward in life in making decisions without fundamentally knowing yourself, right? How can you
Yeah.
craft the life that you want
Yeah.
without that?
Right. So,
So,
to that
Yeah.
point, because Corinne, you're going to a lot. Like so you had the issue with the situation with your dad, right? And then you find yourself again in the second company to, make
Yeah.
another shift. You gone through those processes. Like I'm sure that second one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of where we're at in life, it was a little bit harder decision to make because you got to consider all your responsibilities and all you gotta
Right.
do. A leap of faith in your early 20s is not the same as a leap of faith later
No.
in life. So
yeah.
how do you feel like what Jean said, that once you get to know yourself and once you find, hey, this is what I want to do, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't matter, or how do you know I guess the question I want to ask is, how do you suggest people deal with the fact that a lot of people feel, I can't do those things because I am going to disappoint,
Mm-hmm.
or my commitments are going to let them down, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
fear of, if I do what I want or what is good for me, it's going to affect or not be approved by all these people, right? That I have to account for. How do you
Yeah.
deal with that? And in your case, how you was it different second time around, or do you find it more supportive second time around? In your case,
Yeah. I think it was supportive. Um, but I think the question we all need to ask ourselves is in that regard of like, well, yeah, I could be disappointing someone else, but aren't you disappointing yourself first?
Mm.
true,
If you
true,
go this way. So, and I think we often are, and me, I've been obviously very guilty of it, is we forget about our own our own identity as part of the mix of who are you pleasing.
right,
Like we're here to
right,
please all these people, and we care so much about what other people think about us, and that's where the confidence comes in, right? Because
right,
we think about so much about how we're being looked at here societally, like by our community or by our family or by our parents or whatever.
right,
But what about how you look at yourself? I mean, you're the one leading the life,
right,
right? I mean, and I think that's something we naturally, unfortunately, do a lot. Is we care about what other people think before we care about what we should be thinking about our own happiness.
right,
And that is really where the self-talk or the challenging your own mindset is important. It's a work in progress. It's constantly, that's where your brain's always telling you it's sabotaging you.
right.
So you got to fight the sabotage all the time.
So I think that's a perfect kind of segue into our next segment, which is on building resilience, right? So,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so I'll kick it off by, asking, so what is the difference between surviving a tough time and actually coming out stronger?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jean. I think the difference is really just the timing of it. In some ways I think it's one and the same, because when you're in it, you feel like you're surviving it.
Right.
You're just trying to make it through.
Okay.
Because it's so fast, it's so intense. Is that your adrenaline kicks in? You're just kind of making it through because it's tough. And then coming through it is really, it's almost like a reflective moment.
Okay.
It's like after you've accomplished one hard thing, and then of whatever that journey is, and you say, okay, I made it through. And then it's that moment of gratitude to say, I made it through and I'm stronger because of it.
Yeah.
And it is that practice of, I think a lot of people think that like confidence is built from like having like a huge moment, right? And then like, yeah, I did it. And then like, I'm so strong, I'm so awesome, which could happen. But so much of confidence is really appreciating the micro moments and acknowledging the accomplishment from that. And
You
you
know,
slowly,
as you're talking, I have like this video montage in my head of Sylvester Stallone and Rocky, and he's like doing all the workouts, right? And then it's like the song comes in, it's like getting stronger, right? Like, and it really is like during those moments, he's just surviving, right? Like he's surviving through that workout, right?
yes,
But
yes,
in the action or in the practice of doing those things, that grind, quote unquote, right? You're
uh-huh,
getting stronger and you may not know it in the moment, right? But in retrospect, you
yes,
feel it.
yes, you do. And that's honestly what coaches are there for, to remind you.
Right.
They're like, okay, let's look back from even last week, right? And like, what did you do? You did all this. This is, you should celebrate it. And it's that active reflection. It's that active practice and gratitude. It's, like, I'm this, I did this. And it slowly builds up to remembering that, like, okay, well, I'm not as, weak or fearful as I thought I was. I actually went through this and I made it through successfully.
Right.
So, I think our lives are built up of a lot of those micro moments that we forget about. And we're so used to just like harping on what we don't have and what we're missing. And, I guess I should have, added to that, like, what would you tell your, people out there? It's like, gratitude is huge. It's so huge in building your own confidence and resilience. And I've been telling because I have two boys, I make them write gratitude journals now before they get screen time.
Good. It's a good
And it
practice.
does, it slowly builds their confidence of, knowing, for one, appreciating who they are, but then appreciating the little things around them. Like I want them to say stuff like, I'm thankful we have running water, like just even those things that we take for granted, right? And it just allows people to just appreciate what they have. It helps them remember they're not alone. It's a calming, like it calms your nervous system to, and that will slowly bring in the confidence and like those things that you need to feel good about yourself. And in the end, that's what confidence is. It's like, I feel good about who I am. Right. Like I have all these things around me. I'm feeling loved. Like, but people don't really take a moment to appreciate it and reflect.
So it's funny because we're going back to taking time, right? It's a major concept, right? Like,
yeah,
whether you to find yourself, to understand who you are. We're talking on the previous segment, and now as you're going through the grind and in the middle of the storm, it's important to take time.
It is
to see how far you've gone, right? And appreciate it and be grateful. But that is hard, right? That, I think, of the two, like we talked before, it's hard to say, all right, I don't have the time, right? And then you mentioned priorities.
Yeah.
But and Jean and I have gone through the grind and we've been in the storm. I feel like that second time, it's harder. It's harder to take a step back while you're in the storm, right? While you're in the grind, I think it's harder. What do you recommend when you're talking and coaching? What's a good approach to deal with that? Or to find time?
I would say, especially if you don't have the practice to take the moments, right, to do that, which I would say a lot of people don't, and they feel like they're busy, they're grinding. Find yourself a supportive accountability partner. If it's not a coach, it's someone that really their role is to help encourage you, be that safe space to vent, but then also be that person to remind you of all the great things that you've done, keep you going, like all of that. I think going through it alone when you don't have the practice, you will just end up looping in negativity and and then that doesn't help.
Yeah.
So finding whoever that is, whether that's a friend or a coach or a parent or whoever that is, that person who can remind you, like, you're doing great. Like, remember, this is tough, but you got it, right? Or whatever it is that will, like your accountability partner should know you and should know that, like, know the ways that kind of speak could resonate with you. And in a lot of ways, during the time with our business, I think Jean was a great accountability partner for me.
I think I did it for the both of you.
She did it for both. She did it for both. I agree 100%. 100%.
And it's very organic, but you find your person. Find your person who knows what you're going through, knows, like, it's okay. Like, we're going to make it through. You're not alone.
I love that part of the answer. It's like knowing that you're not alone. Because I think a lot of people, especially probably a lot of our listeners, are, when you're in it, you don't, you can't see what's, you can't step back, but it sometimes feels like you're alone, right? It sometimes feels like, and I feel I've had the experience of doing the grind in two different type of organizations, and I always feel like who you're doing or who you're going through it with makes a big difference, right? Like you said, Jean, I've gone through it with Jean, and I've gone through it with other team members. Having somebody like Jean or a close group of people, like, for us, Ferris and a friend of ours, like, people that are there, like, you feel like you have a team, right? It makes a big difference than if you feel like you're all by yourself and you have no one.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, with that in mind, I'm going to ask you a question, taking the mom angle, right? Because you're a mom and you were going through this as there's this concept of mom guilt, right? Of I am going
She's
as
like,
you're
I know
going
it well.
through it, you're not spending time or so, and working moms, especially ones that have achieved a high degree in whatever they are, have that. They all have it, right? It's now the reason I'm bringing this up, because as a man, most that don't have that like they don't have that guilt. It's like, I gotta do this, right? Now there's many reasons for me. I've tried to dissect this, right? It's whether it's because, hey, this is just the normally men are think of the provider or whatever, but at the end of the day, I'm like, even when you find yourself, and I found that guilt never goes away. So how do you help? How do you help people to not have that guilt? And have you found a way to just eliminate that?
Yeah, it's a struggle sometimes. It is, especially when your child comes up to you and goes, "Are you gonna, like, come out of the office like today at like before dinner?" Because then it's this, like, oh my God, I've been working all day.
Right.
I think guilt, the mom guilt and the dad guilt, it's one of those things where you have to manage it, right? So it's never going to go away, like you said. I think it's that reminder that moms and parents are individuals too. And the reason that mom guilt comes out is because your identity is as a mother. And so, but you also subconsciously realize you have other desires. You have other things. You were not a mom first. You were, a woman without kids.
Right.
And you had interests, and you had friendships, and you had jobs, and you had all these things. And those things don't go away because you're a mother.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So now it's just this added complexity of all the things you need to juggle. And for whatever reason, I think mothers tend to be, not all, but like tend to be more nurturing. And so we just feel like we need to nurture more people. And like, of course, you're loving your kids and you want to do everything you can for them. I think the big thing that I've learned is, as a mother, I need to be able to fill my cup. I mean, that's a very common thing to say, but it's so true. Like, my cup has a lot of other things that aren't kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need to fill that in order to be a better mother. And so I have to remind myself that, like, every time any kind of like little piece of guilt comes in, I say, no, I need this in order to do this for my kids. I need to have balance.
Yeah.
So I think my kids get it, at least for me, where they realize that, like, parents have friends.
Right.
Like, you have to have those conversations with them so that they don't guilt you into this like spiral where you can't get out of, right? Yeah. They should understand, and it's good for them when they get older and they realize, okay, now that just because I have kids doesn't mean I need to drop everything else in my life.
Right. Right.
Like, no, it's a balance. It's a balance of, I have things and you should know I have things, but doesn't mean I love you any less.
Right.
And so that's always a conversation with them, is like, I still love you. Just because I'm not here with you every single moment doesn't mean I don't love you. And I want you to have, the independence and do all these things too. So.
Right. Yeah, it's. I asked you that question because it is tough. As like I said, I have 3 girls, right? And it is hard to work and then be like, no, I got I got to record this podcast. Why? Really? Like, this is the last day of vacation before classes start. It's it's that whole like, but I myself observed, like, having, like, to be honest, when we were going to the grind, especially the first one, my kids were very young, and I did miss a lot. Like, I did miss a lot of when they were young, right?
Yeah.
Like, since then, I've tried to create more balance, and I always try to picture myself like, could I have done that grind and keep the balance? And I'm not sure, I don't know if I can answer that. Like, honestly, I don't know if I could have, right? So, I can imagine it is harder. Like, it makes the struggle even more, right? When you have that whole guilt of my family, but then I take it to your answer. If you take a step back and you think, look, you're doing these things to do it better for your family, right? Or to get better. It helps you through it, but it's got to be tough. So besides taking a step back and looking and getting time and being grateful, what other practices or spiritual, either spiritual practice or, stand-up practices you recommend people do as they're going through that struggle, right? What can they do to lift themselves up?
Well, I mean, I guess spiritually is we all need to, like, recognize that we're all in this as together, and we are, no matter what, we're interconnected to our kids, even if we're not there, like, at every soccer game or. I think a lot of that spirituality or the practice is really going back to gratitude, or going back to you recognizing your own self-worth. Yeah. And how can you also bring that up with your children too, and having that full sort of connection when you are together. I think, we as in your family, being able to make the best of your moments and having the right communication with your kids to understand, this is where I am at, and this is where you are, and let's be let's have like a thoughtful moment together.
Yeah.
Let's really like build that. So for that I guess I would say from a spirituality point. And really, like, I resonate with what you said though about, okay, well, could I have done all this and also done all that with my kids? And it is hard. It is hard. Then it goes back to like some of my stories around like, well, what's your priority? You know, like what's
Right.
important to you?
Right.
But they're hard. They are hard.
As somebody just that's watching the conversation or hearing the conversation, I would say like, give you guys, cut yourselves some slack, you know? Come on, man. I mean, like a lot of, from an outsider's point of view, right? Like what you do and what you don't do with your kids is kind of modeling the behavior that they see, right? Kids are very astute and they pick up
Very true.
on things, right? And I think as a kid, I mean, I'm going back because, you know, in my 30s is when I finally realized my parents were actually people, right? Like up until then, I thought that they were like, you know, they were supposed to be perfect and they should know, you know,
Right.
they should know what to
Right.
say at the perfect moment. And they should know what to do at the perfect
Yep.
moment, right? And that's a
Yep.
very kid way of thinking about your parents, right? And I
Yeah.
think, you know, with my parents, and I go back, they never really showed me that they could fail or that they could make a mistake, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why I had that idea of them. And it took
Yeah.
me up until my 30s to kind of figure that out. I think in the newer era or the newer generation, like allowing your kids to see that you might not be perfect isn't a horrible thing,
It's a
right?
hundred. It's so true, Gina, and I'm glad you brought that up because that is part of like at least my parenting practice is really letting them see the humanistic side of things. Like
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with them seeing me frustrated or crying or any of those emotions that we like traditionally would shield from our
Right.
kids, but like you know that's part of growing up, that's part of who you are, and that doesn't change when your parent is there, you know, like that's all part of it, and being that role model is like so huge.
I would argue it's a part of building resilience within yourself, but also modeling that for your kids.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important. It's important to see them how to deal with those scenarios. Yeah.
For sure.
That's key.
Sure.
I think the big thing that has helped my kids as they're, you know, growing up is if they're struggling through some sort of emotion, or you know, like a lot of times it's really like I feel they're feeling alone. They're feeling like they're going through some experience. They think they're the only ones that have ever gone through it. And oftentimes when that happens, I tell my kids, I'm like, you know, that happened when I was your age. That happened to me. And then they totally change. They totally become at ease. And they're like, really? That did happen to you? I was like, oh, yeah, totally. A lot of times. And then they're like, oh, okay. And then, like, everything's fine again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that connection, like, even as, you know, like, it kind of mirrors what I just mentioned earlier about, you know, what do you do if you're going through the struggle? Like, that accountability partner, that person to tell you, like, you're not alone. You're, like, going through, it's, like, just so, like, soothing for your nervous system and for you just, like, to function. It's, you know, like, as kids, but also as us, as adults. We need it.
It's true.
Yeah.
But you're not alone. And
that's,
and you every answer you give it, that's the theme, right? You're not alone. Right.
Yeah.
Understanding that you're not alone. When you step back and you look,
true.
that's why I kind of like, you know what, this is all good. This is good. Timing is perfect. This is good.
Well, let's move on to
right? Connection is so big.
Yeah, connection is huge. Well, this is perfect time for us to go into our last segment, which is on living with intention. So, Corinne, how does somebody find a clear purpose while keeping themselves grounded when things get tough?
Well, I mean, I think part of it is that having someone to be there with you. Um, but yeah, keeping grounded, I think having some sort of daily practice
Okay.
is big. And I think humans like routine and like having some sense of groundedness is really like just feeling like you are having a grasp of who you are and where you're going.
But I feel
And
like for a lot of people, like that's such a tall order, right? Like, oh,
Right.
like let's start this practice. Like for me, like when I hear like let's start this practice of meditation or I like it seems like a huge lift to me, right? Like
yeah,
so how do you get somebody to actually like do it and see value out of it?
um, it's I'm not surprised. It's not the first time I've heard about it also. And it's I think like first of all like meditation or just having any, I think when people say think of a practice, they think of something very lofty like
Right.
that you need to
Right.
have like some full on setup and like do this thing and like it's going to take up all this time. And I guess for me, maybe I shouldn't use the word practice, but really just like building some small micro habits
Mm.
that you have. And honestly, I think that's why people don't work out regularly, right? Because it just feels like it's this big daunting thing,
Yeah.
right? But
Right.
like for me, when I say have a daily practice and build some sort of habit, it's almost like can you take like 10-15 minutes out of your day
Mhm.
and slowly build up, even if it's, and I recognize like habits take what, like 7 days to really kind of lock
Mm-hmm.
in.
Mm-hmm.
um and
Actually,
so
they research says 21 days to set a new
21
habit.
days, it's
Yeah,
like 21 days to build the habit and like 3 days to like lose the
break it.
habit
To
Yeah.
lose it.
to break
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So it is like, I think there is that you got to have accountability partners for building new habits.
Mm.
But I think that like building a habit of putting yourself first is first the first key. You aren't going to do it without being motivated to do it. And anything, like everyone is always asking themselves, what's in it for me? Everyone's going to ask what is that benefit, and like why am I even motivated to do it? I think the very, very first thing everyone needs to ask themselves is, do you want it?
Right.
Like, do you want to be happy? Do you want to live a purposeful life? Like, without even, like, if you can't even answer yes to that, like, there's no point in doing a habit. You
Right.
have to be very just consciously there for it. Because people will only be naturally motivated to do something if they, like, really want it, for one. But then the habit is really helping you get the reward and the validation of saying this is the right step.
Okay.
And so you can't like, and I would say, try different things that work for you. You might like, even if like meditation or something works for me, that might not be for you. And that's okay. Like
Right.
even like going out on a walk or like, standing barefoot in the grass for 5 minutes probably is a better habit and like for building you feeling grounded than what you're doing now. And so could you do that? Could you have a conversation? Like, let's say you normally do a catch up with someone on a FaceTime, right?
Yeah.
Doing it in your couch, go stand out in the grass and like,
Yeah.
some nature around you. Like that in itself is better, right? Like, so building like the smaller things and sort of experimenting what could work for you. But I think the first thing when you talk about that intention, Jean, is really just like, you have to want it first before you even decide to do anything. And you really got to feel good about that. And and then you can build on, working with discovering what are those things for you. And I think Naveen could help with that, right? Like there's a lot of different practices and options that you could discover, or you could talk to a coach, or you could talk to friends that like are role models that you see are like, you look like you got your shit together. Like, what are you doing? Tell me, like discover what might work for people around you and like try that out.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love it doesn't have to be this massive. You don't have to do meditation. It's just whatever works for you, and find those, like, I love the walking outside. It's great. Like, just find, doesn't have to be the big thing. Just do
No.
what works for you, right? Just the
Yeah.
routine. Now, let me ask you. So, in your work and now what you're doing, right? Working with girls in particular, right? Coaching them, helping them. How do you help them get there? So, with everything that you've gone through, right? So,
Yeah.
and everything you experience, everything how do you help young girls get there? Like,
Yeah.
what do you do to help them find that purpose and find those things at that young age?
I love that question because I do think about my childhood and those stories that I shared with you where I felt so small. I
Right.
felt like I couldn't, like I literally, like it was stuck here, right, in my throat. I couldn't vocalize. So the reason I love Girls on the Run is it's way, like, even though it's called Girls on the Run, it's actually way more than running. And we talk about how the physicality, moving is really good for your mental health. We also have it's a curriculum that's been recognized by the Harvard School of Education, where we do a bit of this. We actually build the life skills for these girls to learn, to teach them how to manage their emotions, express themselves, make good choices on like who would be your good friend, and also learn about the community. So there's a lot of ways that we build it in with activities. So it's way more like approachable for girls. They can understand the language and they remember it and they experience it. They do that, and in the end, they run a 5K together and really feel like, oh, this was a hard thing. I didn't think I could do it, and they did it. And so that kind of gives them that experience of accomplishing a hard goal and builds that final end of confidence. But it's throughout this 8 weeks that we do with them that they are slowly building the confidence. They're slowly even being exposed to concepts and things that maybe in their everyday life, in their circle of family and friends, like no one's told them about.
Okay.
And that's what I love about the program is that I've been observing so many girls who just like they go home and they learn a certain methodology from their family, right? This is a program that really can expose them to new possibilities.
Okay. Is there anything like that for boys? And you have your moment too. So the reason I'm asking you is because, and it's a loaded question. I have observed as long, I don't know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, Jean, I think. I have observed a shift, right, where it was kind of like more women were going into college, more degrees. Guys were kind of being put into this sort of, I don't know, buckets, and you had to be a certain way. It was very confusing to be a guy, right, at the time for young guys. And now if you fast forward to where we're at today, not to get into politics, but if there's a sort of backlash happening, right, and guys are going too extreme, right, that they're kind of fighting and becoming toxic and all these kind of things. And I feel like we also have to teach the boys, give them that experience, give them that thing. Is there a program similar to what you're doing? Or if there's not, what are you doing with your kids, with your boys to do that?
So there is a program. I'm not vouching for it because I have not gone through that program. Okay. And because Girls on the Run is actually an international program.
Okay.
It's a lot across the United States and Canada and various different countries. It's been around for like 25 years. So it's well vetted, just like such a wonderful program and a huge community of Girls on the Run girls. I know that there is one called Let Me Run, and it's in various different cities. It may not be as, spread out as much, but it is a very parallel program for boys to help them build emotional resilience and,
Right.
also discover themselves, communicate in a way that probably they never got when they were kids.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, me being a mom of boys, I did ask myself, like, if there was one, but at the same time, I also 100%, and I will say, Let Me Run is really, I think it's meant for boys to, uplift boys.
Mm-hmm.
What I think is missing a little bit is a program to help boys also recognize the equality in both boys and girls.
Right. Right. Thank you for
And I
saying
don't
that.
know, that there's any program for that in
Okay.
particular. However, Girls on the Run welcomes male coaches,
Okay.
and I
Yeah.
think that having, I love it. I personally get so excited when we have a male coach a site with girls, a group of girls, because it shows a few things, right? It shows the girls in the program that like men can support girls in
Yeah.
this way.
Yeah.
And even like it helps them kind of think like, okay, it questions sort of challenges like what's going on in their life, what's
Yeah.
going on in their circle. And like maybe my dad or my uncle or my brother thinks this way. But there's this other male role model that I've been working really
Right.
close with, and he is totally different. And I love that he's so supportive and all this stuff. So it just helps girls sort of see, again, that like possibility outside of their box of life, right? It really does open it up. And so I love when men are coaches.
Yeah. No, that makes a big difference. And my girls they're all doing different type of sports, and you're right. It's important that they see that support and then they get it, and then they see that there is not this kind of major division. Now,
Yes.
bringing it all together, I do feel the reason I ask you the question is because I feel we're the same generation, right? And I think we grew up in a time like in the 80s. I feel that generation that we grew up with was very kind of black and white, as in men's roles, women role, and this kind of thing, right? And that affected, to me, it affected both, right? Like a lot of people and the dynamics of how people dealt with their purpose and what they want to do in life. And now that we are on the other side, we're in a different stage of our life. I feel we can help the young generation, like the kids, both boys and girls, on how to find their purpose, right? How to learn that we were saying before, how to learn how to deal with adversity, how to deal with challenge, how to take a step back and appreciate what they've done, right? They achieve, and prepare for a balance, what should be a balanced life, not just but also in a spiritual perspective, right? So I'm a big fan of what you're doing, and I hope that our listeners are taking away that, look, we have all the lessons that we learn, we can pass them on and do better, right? We can help the next generation. That said, I do feel objectively that they're a much better generation. I feel very positive about the future because I do see this new generation kind of, they're more aware, right? A lot of the things that we're discussing here, they seem to kind of get it automatically, right? Like, yeah, you take the time, or yeah, you do this. So for the future, I'm very optimistic. I do feel like we're on the right track. That said, it's good to teach them early, right? And help them, almost like shortcutting what we had to go through to get here.
100%. And that's why I love programs like this, where we are helping the youth. I mean, they are our future, and we need to think about that. We as adults still can be better role models, right? To be breaking what they call like the generational trauma, right? Where what we have been taught and we carry with us doesn't carry on to them. And serve as those role models, serve as, teaching the practice. And And I think like when you were talking about all that, Humphrey, I think we can all just really, on a spiritual level, simplify and remind ourselves that we are all one. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
are that concept of unity. And so much of what has happened in the political climate, or how we've just even socially look at gender and look at each other, like I get so frustrated because I'm like, why do we need to be this way?
Right.
Like, why can't we just look at everyone as humans? We're all, like the person in Asia is probably experiencing the same things. They have more in common than we do with us than not, right? So like, why are we overcomplicating life, right? Like, why can't we all just have compassion for one another? I know it's like a very
No. I love that. I love, actually,
really overcomplicated.
I love it. So I hope, Jean, this becomes a clip. Why are we overcomplicating life? It's just like, there's no need for it. It's just, we need to have compassion and we're all one. I love that. I love it.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. So thank you very much, Corinne, for sharing, all your insight and your thoughts. We loved having you on the show.
It was a pleasure, and I loved this conversation. Thank you for having me.
As I think back to, the whole of our conversation, a couple of things, stand out to me, which is, one is follow your truth. Even though it might be scary at times, maybe you have to disappoint people that you love, but really following your truth, is honoring yourself, but also honoring the people that love you and want the best for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think resilience is also something that we talked about. And one thing that's clear to me is that resilience is built through struggle, right? It's not, you got to struggle to get that, to be stronger. Struggling in life, that's okay. That means that you're making progress, and whether you know it now or in retrospect, you're going to get something out of it. Grind that through. I mean, we use that word a lot. And I think lastly, it's that just living with intention, right? Like taking control of your life, not being a passenger, right? And really live.
Yeah. Exactly. Live with intention. And you need to want it. You need to want it. No one else can want it for you. And growth does not come without that discomfort.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
Very
if
true.
you are not feeling uncomfortable, you probably aren't growing.
Yeah.
What I'd like to invite everybody is to create a small routine or small habit. So each morning, close your eyes for 1 minute. Just ask yourselves, what choice can I make today that would honor my purpose? And then go ahead and make that choice. Even if it's a very small choice, do it, and eventually you'll build that routine, that muscle that will help you get to living with intention, as we're saying.